You are watching Real Hope with W.L. Laney. My guest today is Elana Davidson. Elana, welcome to the program. I'm glad to have you here.
It's great to be here.
So tell me, why did you write Finding Your Own Happy?
Well, Finding My Own Happy was written for the perpetual soul searcher who wonders what's wrong with them and why, when they've done so much personal development or maybe been to therapy, that they're still not all that happy and they wonder what they're missing. And I wrote it because that was my story and that was my journey. And after 20 or so years of struggling with depression and doing lots of work on myself, lots of personal development, I really started to wonder, what am I missing and what is going to make the real and lasting difference? And I had to sort of figure some things out on my own that nobody else could really show me or tell me. And I realized through that journey that there were a lot of other people that struggled in similar ways that were missing some of the same information that, if they had it, might make a real and significant difference in their lives.
Okay, so let me ask this question. Can you think of a moment
Yes.
when you said to yourself, that's all I can take, I've got to make a change?
Absolutely. It's very vivid in my mind.
Okay, tell me about it briefly.
So I was I was homeless. I was struggling with my mental health. I felt like I didn't really want to be on planet Earth anymore. It was during the Syrian refugee crisis, actually. And I said to myself, okay, there's a huge amount of suffering on planet Earth right now. I'm also suffering. I'm not going to take my own life. So if I'm going to stay here, I have to find a way to do it in a way that is easier for me. And if I'm going to have a reason for being here, then I have to figure out what is it that I am uniquely positioned and qualified to do that can help alleviate some of the suffering that is going on this planet.
Okay.
And so that was a real commitment to myself to say, I am going to stay here and I'm going to find a way for my life to be happy and to help other people have happier lives.
Okay, that's great. Now, let me make sure I've got the details straight here in my mind. You were a Syrian refugee?
No, it was during the Syrian refugee crisis.
Okay.
And so I was aware of how much suffering was going on the planet and how many people were suffering, and feeling like, well, if I'm going to continue to live, then part of my purpose in life is to help find a way to reduce the amount of suffering on the planet.
Okay. And how did you happen to be homeless at that time?
Oh, it's sort of a long story. I've been homeless a few different times throughout my life, in part having to do with my mental health and struggling to find ways to be able to keep a job or have a harmonious living environment. So there are many factors that have contributed, which I'm thankfully is now a thing of the past. But
yes. Well, we're going to get to that. I want to establish a good foundation for the listeners, because there's lots of people that are suffering today, and we want to help those people.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So when you say you were homeless, were you living in your car?
I had a car. I was traveling around in my car. I was staying with different friends, maybe 2 or 3 nights a week here and there. I had a little bit of a sort of what I consider a circuit that I would travel. Some nights I would just sleep in my car myself. But I didn't have any place to land. That was my space. And I had tried a couple different times also to get a living situation together, and then for various reasons it would fall apart, and it's quite an interesting journey.
Okay. All right. So that brings me to my next question.
Mm-hmm.
When did you first have a glimmer of hope?
Well, it's interesting because I was on a cycle for a while in my life of hope and despair. So I would think that this next thing, this next opportunity, this next situation is finally going to solve my problem. It's finally going to get me to this new place in my life. And I would hang my hat on this new thing, whatever it was, a new job, whatever. And then I'd put all my hope on that. And then when it didn't work out the way that I had hoped or thought it would, then I would go back into feeling a sense of despair and like nothing was working in my life until I found the next thing to put my hat on. And I've since realized that there was a cycle that I was stuck in, that when I was able to get out of it and approach my life in a different way, I've been able to create lasting change rather than just being in that cycle of this next thing outside of myself is going to finally fix my life.
Okay, so when did your hope become the hope that broke the cycle?
Yep. Well, so I was in and out of the cycle of homelessness. And then I just finally decided, you know what, I need support was part of what I decided, and I need help. And so I chose to go stay with my grandmother and just get my feet back under me, so to speak. And so that was really the beginning of just sort of saying, you know what, I deserve this support. And my grandmother, I had some conflicts about staying with my grandma that had to do with the rest of my family. But I said, you know what, this is between me and my grandma. I don't care what my parents think. I don't care what anybody else thinks. I'm doing this for me because I can't keep going on like this. Okay. And so I did. I went and stayed with her. I got a job. I worked. I was able to put some things in place. And then by the time I was ready to move on from her, was in a much better place. And then since then have changed my life drastically. And that was in 2016 or 15.
2015, 2016?
Yeah,
okay.
That was.
What was it about your grandmother that made you think she was going to be able to help you?
Well, I remember this one time when I was struggling, and she looked at me in the eye and she said, Elana, you can stay here as long as you need to. And that just made me cry. It was like, she's saying, like, I am here and I believe in you and I have faith in you and I'm here to support you, and you have a place to be. And that made a huge difference. I didn't get along with my grandma swimmingly 100% of the time, but she had offered me a space where I could be, and I could have space just to be however I was going to be. And I knew that she was, didn't have an expiration date, and that I had a safe place to be. And so that made a really big difference for me.
Okay, so then would you say that the real key in that relationship was the fact that your grandmother had faith in you?
Yes, I think that she had faith in me, and also that she was willing to she was willing to be committed to supporting me. I think is part of it also, is like just the fact that I knew that I had that as long as I needed it. So it was this sort of like, I have your back and I'm going to be here for you and you can count on me. I think it's that you can count on me piece that made a really big difference for me.
I think there's a Bible passage, Elana, that says faith without works is dead. Mm-hmm. So your grandmother had faith with works.
Yeah. And also,
I'll take care of you.
And it was also encounter, like I had said, there was some conflict with the rest of my family. That statement was her basically saying, I don't care what anybody else thinks. And I don't care what your parents say. You get to stay here if you want to. And so to me, that was like, she was taking a stand for me. That was really valuable because my parents had definitely made it clear that I wasn't welcome for long amounts of time. So that just made me feel like, okay, somebody's in it with me.
What a marvelous opportunity, and what a wonderful grandmother.
Yes, and it was great. That must have been 2016. I moved across the country after that, and she was in her 90s already. She died a few years ago now, So that was just a couple of years before she died. So I got to have this relationship and connection with her in sort of toward the end of her life that maybe I wouldn't have had if I hadn't stayed with her.
Okay, well, that was great, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you've moved in with Grandma. Grandma has faith in you.
Mm-hmm.
And what was your next step?
So I stayed with my grandmother about 5 or 6 months. And at that point, it was sort of clear to me, like, okay, now is the time to choose what I'm going to do next. Like, this has been good. I can't stay here forever. I came out to Utah actually to visit a friend and ended up moving to Utah. It's sort of a funny story, but everything just kind of came to visit Utah. My relationship with that friend actually didn't work out. We stopped talking to each other. We went our separate ways, but I had 5 weeks planned in Utah. It all worked out really beautifully, met new people, had support, and then it all kind of just fell into place to move here. I'm originally from Massachusetts, so to move across the country to Utah, it all just kind of came into place, and I moved to Utah, and my life has been very different ever since.
Okay, so you got a job to support yourself, I'm assuming.
Yep. So I found an incredibly affordable apartment, which actually I still live in. So 4 years later, this is the longest I've ever lived in one place ever in my life. Yeah. And then I've had a series of different jobs throughout my time here that have supported me in being able to write a book and to follow my dreams more fully, to build my coaching business. So I've really, if we go back to that point of saying, what am I going to do to help alleviate the suffering on planet Earth? Really, my time in Utah has been about how do I do the work that can support my life while I continue on my mission toward that thing. And so part of my mission toward that thing is writing my book, Finding Your Unhappy, and then also developing my coaching work. And so all of the jobs that I have are always with the aim to further that work and further that mission.
Okay, so let's assume for a moment that I am depressed.
Yeah.
I've been such a jerk. None of my family likes me anymore, and I've had a few things go wrong, and so I'm homeless. I'm on the street, living in my car. What kind of advice do you give me?
So one of the things that I tell people that are in crisis is to get really super present in their lives. One of the things that helped me when I was first newly homeless was to, if I was at lunchtime and I started to worry about where I was going to sleep that night, it wasn't good. But what I found is if I could be at lunchtime and enjoy lunchtime, that by the time bedtime came around, often things showed up that I couldn't have imagined or couldn't have predicted that supported me or helped me. Like I met up with somebody like, oh, come stay with me for the night, or I found something. And it really alleviated some of that stress also, is to stay really super present with my life. And to be open to possibilities. And a lot of time when we're in crisis, we get stuck in like only seeing what's in front of us and seeing how it can't work, or I've tried everything and there's not another way. And the more that you can open yourself up to things that are not yet present for you, like magic happens, things show up that you couldn't even have imagined. You can only sort out what your logical brain is already aware of, what your mind is already aware of. And when you can stop trying to just rearrange all of the puzzle pieces that you already have and make space for something more, the missing puzzle piece to come in, it can create a lot more ease.
Okay, so let's say you're at work and it's lunchtime.
Yep.
How did you determine how you were going to react as far as, okay, I'm worried about where I'm going to stay tonight, or I'm going to be happy and things are going to work out?
Like how to manage that?
Yes.
Well, first of all, I know that like the stress level that I'd create about worrying about the future. Well, one of the things that happened was I would like worry about some future scenario and what was going to happen. And this is true whether or not I was homeless. I would worry about the future scenario, try to arrange it all in my mind and try to figure out a solution to this future problem. But then when I would get to that future place, it would be very different than anything I would have imagined. And like even some of the perceived problems that I thought I was going to encounter didn't even exist. And I realized I'd wasted all of that mental energy trying to defend myself against a problem that turned out to not even be a problem in that moment.
What do they say? 85% of the things we worry about never happen?
Right. And somebody once told me, and I really like this, is that worrying is praying for things that you don't want to happen. It's like, okay, that's good. And so, I mean, what can you do really? Like, and another piece that I use is like, when you're thinking about something, is there something that you can actively do about it? Yes or no? Are you going to actively do something about it? Yes or no? If yes, then go do it. And if no, just stop thinking about it. And so like if you think, oh, I got to go call this person, or oh, I have this thing to do, or like I got to remember this, or you're just spinning it around in your mind, it's like, are you going to take action on it or not? And if you're not, put it aside, save it for later, because you're just wasting your brain space trying to, replay that scenario over and over again.
Okay, let's talk about, because you're working now, you have a coaching program, Healing Minds and Hearts coaching. How did you move from solving your own problem to helping other people solve theirs?
Well, so I've studied a lot of different things throughout my life, in part to try to solve my own problems. But then I also realized I have an aptitude for being present with people and hearing their pain and listening to what's going on for them. And I'm also, one of the things that I discovered along my healing journey is that I'm also incredibly empathic and sensitive. So I can easily pick up on what is going on for other people, what issues they're facing, what emotions are showing up for them. And so then over the years, I started to talk with people and talk with them about what was going on for them, and be able to pull out those key pieces of what was really at the heart of their struggle, and to help them identify it and then figure out how to shift and change it. And so over the years of doing that, my work has evolved. The tools that I've used that I write about in the book, I've evolved into the work. And so now that's mostly what I do, is to just sit with people, talk with them, use the vast toolbox that I have from all of the work that I've done on myself personally and all of the training I've done professionally, to then help other people come to their own sense of clarity and their own sense of relief. I can't tell you how many times I get told, wow, I got more out of this one conversation with you than all of the years I've been in therapy. So to me, that's a real testament that I'm doing something right.
Okay, it is. It's a great thing. The thing that ran through my mind when you were telling me that you have the empathy for other people, that's good for them. Does it hurt you?
Well, that's the piece that it took me so many years to figure out, was to understand that a lot of my unhappiness and a lot of my struggle was actually that I felt everything that was going on with the people around me. And I didn't know how to deal with it, and I didn't know what to do with it. I just thought I was messed up, and I thought I had a lot of emotional problems. And so over the years, as I've learned to tell the difference between what is me and what is not, and then how to work with it, it's gotten way easier. And I'd say, as far as like with clients, I rarely sort of absorb what's going on for my clients. It really does. Most of the time, I feel better and more energized after a conversation with a client than I did going into it. So it actually helps me.
Okay, so that's a real key then, is focusing instead of inward on your problems, focusing on another person with their problems and giving them solutions that's going to help them. is what's bringing joy to you.
Yes. And I think there's this piece when you're a sensitive person and you get around somebody and you can feel like certain people I will get around and I would just feel a heaviness, or I'll feel a sadness, or I'll feel some sort of feeling that has to do with them. But in an everyday sort of way, I'm not about to go and like pry into their personal business, right? I just feel that that's what's happening for them. Versus in a coaching relationship, I have the permission to say, oh, I feel this is what's going on for you. Can we look at it and can we change it? And so for me, that it's really satisfactory and there's so much relief because I get to address what I'm sensing and help them shift it rather than just being aware of it and be like, I kind of feel this stuff going on, but I can't do anything about it.
Okay. Do you have an example of another person that was in suffering depression, let's say, and you have been able to help them? You have just a quick example?
Yeah, well, I have a client that I worked with. I actually worked with her for an entire year. And I mean, she was a recluse. She was convinced there was something wrong with her. She had been, very isolated. Her husband had died and her parents had died. And she started to have a social life again. She just wrote me recently, this was like over a year ago that I stopped working with her, but said like, I got out of such a dark place and I'm doing really well and my life is feeling really wonderful. There's actually a quote on my website that she said, this work basically saved my life. For the first time, my world makes sense. And so to see her just blossom, when I met her, she was like super insecure, super uncomfortable around people. And just to see how she just changed so remarkably in the course of the year that we worked together was really phenomenal. And like just also such an easier person to be around by the end, because she was so much more comfortable just being herself and being in her own skin, so to speak.
So the best way for me to be happy is to make you happy.
Well, that's the belief that a lot of people function from, right? And a lot of people think that the answer, and this goes back to your childhood, it goes back to different pieces. They think that if I please the people in my life, if I can make the people in my life happy, then I'm going to be okay and I'm going to be happy. But usually that strategy ends up backfiring. It usually doesn't work. You go out of your way to contribute to other people, to make them happy, to do anything that you can for them in the hopes that they're going to turn around and do the same for you. They're going to be there for you. They're going to care for you. They're going to support you. And oftentimes it doesn't work. And I hear from so many people that just feel like they don't really matter, or they give their heart and soul to other people, but nobody really cares about them. So I would say the key to your own happiness is to make yourself matter and your own life matter as much as anybody else's, and then do the things that give you a sense of purpose, give you a sense of joy, give you a sense of satisfaction, and also learn to not take responsibility for how everybody else feels in your life and let them be responsible for their own feelings.
Okay, so the part that's going to make me happy is helping you, as long as I'm not expecting you to turn around and help me.
Right. I think all of us as human beings, we enjoy contributing to others, right? And there's a place of satisfaction and joy in giving and having it make a difference. Where it gets sort of tricky is a lot of people overextend, overgive, are a caretaker, a people pleaser kind of thing. And then you're giving up on yourself in that process. So I say give to others and contribute to others as long as it's contributing to your happiness and your joy. And the moment it stops also doing that for you, then stop.
Okay, let's. You gotta forgive me, because every once in a while, the thought comes rushing in, and
yes, absolutely.
I'm talking about it before I've even had a chance to really think about it. So
yes, I get it.
Okay, so people who attend church,
yeah,
if they give their 10% or whatever,
mm-hmm.
because they love God, they are thankful for the blessings in their life, then they're going to be fulfilled and blessed because they gave.
Mm-hmm.
If, on the other hand, they give their 10% and then look at heaven and say, all right, now you owe me.
Yeah.
Is that the difference?
Yep, that is a piece of the difference for sure. It's do it because it brings joy and happiness to your own heart, and there's gratitude and enthusiasm. But yeah, if you're hoping that it's going to make a difference and make someone care about you, that's a lot of what I see is like, I'm going to be such a caring and loving and kind person, which is great, but to an extreme because I feel like nobody cares for me, or I want somebody to take care of me or care for me. And usually that formula then doesn't work. But care and be joyful and share and do it from an abundant heart. And yeah, then it's like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how people respond, and it's a satisfaction.
Okay. How do people get a hold of you to get involved in your coaching program?
Yep. So you can get a free copy of my book at findingyourownhappybook.com. And then that gives you connection to all the rest of my content and my contact info. You can also go to my website, which is healingmindsandhearts.com.
Elana, thank you so much for being with us today. This is very helpful for people, and let's spread the news and get some happiness helping other people be happy.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for being with us on the program.
My pleasure.